This week, elections. But first, everything else. In this early week of November, there have been two skirmishes between the Army of the Potomac and the Army of Northern Virginia, between Union cavalry and Confederate cavalry. But now to those juicy elections. Let's go through unopposed elections. Connecticut can be called for Republican incumbent James Dixon. Delaware is called for James A. Bayer Jr., a Democrat. Florida is not sending anyone. Indiana can be called for Thomas A. Hendricks. What's this? Breaking news. Joseph A. Wright, the interim appointee senator for Indiana, a Unionist, is being replaced by David Turpie, a Democrat, after Wright retired. When the 37th Congress starts up, Turpie will finish the term. We can call Michigan for Zachariah Chandler, Republican. Mississippi for no one. For Missouri, John B. Henderson will be returning this time as an unconditional Unionist, not just a regular Unionist. Tennessee and Texas will send no one. Vermont can be called for the incumbent Republican, as can Wisconsin. As for Virginia, the incumbent Unionist retired, and a new one is elected to replace him. Now to the opposed elections. California is a toss-up between two Democrats. Incumbent Milton Latham, hostile to the administration, and John Conness, a war Democrat, formerly a Douglas Democrat. The predictions are hard for this one. 1856, it went Buchanan, despite John C. Fremont being a former senator and governor of the state. In 1860, it went to Lincoln, but that was mostly due to a split vote. Predictions are for Conness, but they are razor thin. In Maryland, it's Anthony Kennedy, the incumbent, against Robert E. Johnson, both Unionists. This one is easier to call for Johnson. It's actually unknown if Kennedy is even running this time. We get to Massachusetts and Charles Sumner. This is a safe Republican seat. He has 3 challengers, 2 Democrats and 1 Republican, but his prestige and fame will not allow for vote splitting with Charles Francis Adams Sr., the fellow Republican. Can we call yet? In Minnesota, it's hard to predict, for it's Governor Alexander Ramsey against Democrat Andrew G. Chatfield. Henry Maurer Rice is the retiring incumbent, a Democrat. But the state has been fairly Republican for quite some time. It's for, of course, the state legislature to decide which is Republican, but after the Dakota War, who knows? New Jersey is a regular special hybrid. The first we'll cover is special. John Rachel Thompson, a Democrat, died. Richard S. Field, a Republican, was to replace him as a successor. The time for election has come. James W. Wall, a Copperhead, versus Richard S. Field. These are looking good for Wall. The regular election, it is a war Democrat, William Wright, against William A. Newell. Things are looking good for Wright. In New York, Preston King lost renomination. Replacing him as Republican nominee is Edwin D. Morgan. He has a challenger, Erastus Corning. This will be a close one, as Republicans are expected to break ranks. Ohio. Benjamin Wade, a Republican, is looking at things and worrying. A staunch Republican in a battleground state, things can go badly. Pennsylvania is a 3-way race between William D. Kelly, a Republican, Charles R. Buckle, a Democrat, and an old face, Simon Cameron. Splitting the vote in a battleground state can be disastrous. But Simon Cameron is familiar with the state, and his break with Lincoln brings him cross-party support. This is the closest to margins. Some even expecting bargains to break a possible tie. Rhode Island is the 2-election special. The special election is to replace James F. Simons, a man who quit the Senate due to corruption charges, and the follow-up is a regular election for Simmons or his replacer's seat. There's a joint run between the governor, William Sprague IV, and Lieutenant Governor Samuel G. Arnold. All the challengers are Republican. It's heavily leaving for the tag team duo of governor and lieutenant governor. I can begin to call things. First, Ohio. The process is unknown. We can call it for Benjamin Wade. To Pennsylvania, the other battleground seat. In a stunning display of party loyalty, with 67 of the 133 votes, we can call this one for Charles R. Buckle. Cameron received 65 votes, and the Democrat only won. So Massachusetts, it's a blowout victory for Senator Sumner, who took home 137 votes, followed by Hosea Abbott, a Democrat with 43 votes. Charles Adams and Caleb Cushing both received 2 votes. Minnesota, an expected close race that defies predictors everywhere, with Alexander Ramsey receiving 45 votes to Andrew Chatfield, with a margin of 45%, a clear showing for the Republicans in the state. We are receiving word from both New Jersey and New York. New Jersey doesn't surprise anyone. James Wall and William Wright Both Democrats are elected to finish and continue the term. Now for the confusion. The 86th New York State Legislature, December 1862. The Democrats had a good year, winning all executive offices and tying the Assembly 64-64, but lost by a gigantic margin in the Senate. January 6, it comes time for the Speaker of the Assembly to be elected. For 3 ballots, it's deadlocked. Continue to the 7th ballot, is locked. How about January 8th to the 26th ballot, January 9th to the 37th, January 10th to the 48th ballot? Take Sunday off, of course. On the 12th, we get to the 53rd ballot, January 15th. 9 days after this all began, a vote of 58-58. The 78th ballot ends in a tie. Republican leader Chauncey M. Depew is getting worried about tearing out his coalition of war Democrats and Republicans. The Democrats under Gilbert Dean are equally worried. Depew is hearing complaints from his colleagues when there's a knock on the door. He opens it, and there stands Theophilus C. Calquit, a fire-breather Democrat. This repeatedly attacks the Republicans on the issue of slavery. Calquit makes a proposition. If Depew can make him Speaker, the Senate seat is his to choose. A hard sell to the Republican Party, and Depew doesn't even know if he can trust Calquit, but he shakes his hand. On January 26, the 92nd ballot comes down. 61-59, Calquit is the Speaker, which takes us to February 3rd, 1863. It's a hard run, not because of the final vote, but procedure. In the end, all 160 members of the state legislature, meaning the 23-8 control of the Republicans in the Senate, can break any tie and even overcome defections, but they have to get there. The way it works is the Senate votes on a candidate, then the state assembly votes. Once they have both voted, it will go between the full state legislature for a final vote. If Calquit doesn't vote Edwin D. Morgan, it will never get to the 160 men for the victory. First, the Senate votes. 23, Edwin D. Morgan, the Republican, to 7 for Orestes Kerning, the Democrat. Then to the Assembly, 62 for Orestes Kerning, and then 64 for Morgan. Right? Well, no, it's not over yet. 1 vote for Fernando Wood, former mayor of New York, and Calquit votes for John Adams Dix. Is the deal off? What happened? Depew is not worried, though. The second ballot is had. Calquit votes Dix, then Depew votes Dix. 65-63, Dix wins against Kerning in the Assembly? Calquit won't vote Republican. That's improper and illegal. But now the vote can proceed to the full legislature. Calquit votes Dix, but with 1 vote for Dix, 1 vote for Daniel S. Dickinson, 17 for Kerning, and 86 for Morgan, Calquit upheld the bargain. We can call it for the Republicans. Rhode Island time. Arnold and Sprague win it for the Republicans, both receiving votes in the high 80 percentile. The control over the legislature is invaluable for the Republicans in the state. To California. There is the wide-reaching California Democratic Party. John Curtis against Milton Latham. After 2 hung ballots, Curtis is elected as a war Democrat. And then he announces something. He is switching to Republican, or more specifically, Union Republican. Wow. Maryland, it is called for Robert E. Johnson, a Unionist hold. The Senate is chosen thusly: an increase of 1 for the Republicans, a decrease of 1 for the Democrats, and a change of 1 Unionist into an unconditional Unionist. John P. Hale, the Republican Senator of New Hampshire, steps down as chair of the Senate Republican Conference and is replaced by Henry B. Anthony, the senator from Rhode Island. To the House, and first, of course, Oregon. It's currently being held by George Hill, who won by a narrow margin of 94 votes last time. This time, with a margin of 30%, John R. McBride of the Union Party wins the seat. Off to Maine, the Republicans lose a district by the census, and the Democrats pick up the 1st district of Maine by a margin of less than 130 votes. Indiana, a reversal for the Republicans. They lose 3 seats to the Democrats, flipping the 7-4 representative ratio. In Iowa, reappointment adds 4 seats that all go to the Union Party. Then we go to Ohio. Let's go through the safe districts. The new 5th district is a safety for the Democrats. The 10th for the Republicans, right? Wrong, it's a 3-way running, so the Democrats can win by vote splitting. 12th is redistricted from the former 10th and is a Democratic stronghold from creation. The 18th and 19th are both Republican strong, though. The 1st district, by a 54-46 percentage vote, re-elects the incumbent Democrat, Representative Pendleton. The 2nd, by a 50.5 to 49.5 vote, the Republicans lose the seat to Alexander Long. I'm skipping the third for now. The fourth state Democrat, as John F. McKinley, takes 52% of the vote. Same with the sixth state Democrat, Representative White, takes 52%. With the merging of 3 districts into the Ohio 7th, a Republican, Unionist, and Democrat won each. The Representative Samuel S. Cox defeats the also incumbent Representative Samuel Schelberger to hold the seat for the Democrats. The newly formed 8th goes to the Democrats by slim margins, William Johnston having 51%. To the 9th, it's incumbent against incumbent, and with 52.8% of the vote, Warren P. Noble defeats the Republican challenger. To the 10th, incumbent Representative James M. Ashe, with 38.6% of the vote, holds it for the Republicans. To the 11th, an upset, with 56.2% of the vote, the Democrats take it, with Wells A. Hutchins winning. 12th, the Democrats take with 63%. The 13th, the Democrats take with 56.8% of the vote, with John O'Neill to be seated. The 14th by 50.09% of the vote. We are calling it for George Bliss. The 15th, another merged district. The Democrats take it 53%. The 16th is New Democrat, win 55%. 17th, New Republican, 52%. The Republicans take the final 2 seats. How did it get this bad? In Ohio, the Republicans lost 8 seats and the Democrats gained 6. To Pennsylvania, the Democrats win 6, the Republicans lose 9. Although 2 independent Republicans are created and will caucus with the Republicans, but Jesus. Delaware goes Democrat, beating the incumbent Unionist. Massachusetts loses 1 Unionist due to reappointment. The rest of the states have come in, well, the ones expected. New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Connecticut, Kentucky, Vermont, Virginia, and Maryland will happen during the 38th Congress's term. First, my home state of Missouri. The Democrats lose 5 seats and the Unionists gain 7. The Republicans hold their 1 and 1 is empty. To Kansas. Then the Republicans kept their seat with 5,000. To Kansas. There the Republicans kept their seat with a 5,000 vote margin. Things are looking up. New Jersey then. The Democrats gain 1 from the Republicans. Okay, that is to be anticipated, of course. Now for the wild card. Minnesota. The first district goes to the Republicans with a 16.4% margin. The second to the Republicans with a 16.9% margin. Is this the win the Republicans need in their sails? To Michigan. It's gaining 2 seats. There's some seat trading, of course, but in the end, both parties gain 1. Wisconsin, a gain of 3 seats, and they all go to Democrats. That leaves New York and Illinois. New York is to lose 2 seats. The first district is a switch, as the Democrats win by a margin of 5.6%, defeating the incumbent Representative Carter. The second district is a keep for the Dems, and is the third district, and is the fourth. The fifth goes to the Dems being the incumbent representative, while a Republican. The 7th is a keep for the Dems, the 8th is a keep, the 9th, the 10th. It's a 3-way race that the Dems win, taking the seat from an incumbent Republican by a margin of 5%. The 11th is a keep for the Democrats. The 12th is a take for the Democrats, winning by an 8.3% margin. The 13th is a merging and a take for the Democrats by 10% margin. 14th is a keep for the Dems. 15th, a take by a 5.6% margin. 16th is a keep for the Republicans, as is the 17th. The 18th is a take by the Republicans by 2%. 19th is a keep, 20th keep, 21st, 22nd, 23rd, 24th, 25th, 26th, 27th, 28th. The 30th is a Democratic take by a margin of 60%. The 31st is a keep for the Republicans. The Dems took 7 seats. The Republicans lost 9. To Illinois, I guess. Addition of 5 districts. The first 3 stay the same 2 Republicans first and third, 1 Democrat, which is the second. The 4th district changes hands to the Democrats, the 5th to the Republicans, the 6th changes to Republicans, the 7th, 8th, and 9th stay the same as Democrats. The 10th is Dem, the 11th is Dem, the 12th Dem, the 13th Dem. Large, it stays Dem. 4 gains for Democrats, 1 gain for Republican. I guess interesting to note, the 8th district, Lincoln's home district, goes Democrat as John T. Stewart, and technically stays Democrat, but he beats a Republican incumbent because of merging. You understand. It's a victory for the Democrats, gaining 27 and the Republicans losing 27. The Republican majority is reduced to a plurality. Speaker of the House, Gauche Grau, lost his seat. What happened here? The Democrats won big in the battleground states, using fear of liberated slaves, taxes, the Confederate victory, suffrage, waves, and the government to bring up support. Lincoln will now need to win over the conservative Unionists if he wants anything done. But where is Lincoln on this catastrophic night? With Sickles. McClellan is a bust, so Lincoln travels to review some soldiers and goes to visit Dan. After securing mounted officers, Sickles marches to Lincoln with a procession in the 100.
The president came down in his quiet way.
Lincoln stands there with only a general and a caretaker to him. Dan Sickles offers him a horse fit for a general and regales him like a Roman emperor.
Sickles, I'm not going to take command of this army. What is this all for?
The artillery then goes off to impress the commander-in-chief. Afterwards, they march. And Lincoln overhears two farmers converse about the giant procession.
I guess from the looks of that tall and all this fuss that the Yanks have captured a big prisoner.
Lincoln, always a joker, turns to the farmer and says,
"That's so. I'm Jeff Davis."
Sickles watches his men be inspected by President Lincoln, who is admittedly a pretty bad horseman.
But if a smile played on their lips, there was love in their eyes, and as they rested on that sad, earnest, good face, most of them beheld for the first and last time.
Sickles asks the president to give a rousing speech to his men.
"These men are going again to battle, where I cannot be with them."
Lincoln won't speak to them, but at the last minute, he turns to Sickles and says,
"Tell them I think I have never seen a better show."
On the 1st of November, Sickles was ordered to move south on the Orange and Alexandria Railroad to rebuild bridges, repair tracks, and guard the roads. This week was a lot. The Republicans keep strong in the Senate, but the House. This election is complicated. It's a defeat for the Republicans, but not quite a victory for the Democrats. The Republicans remain the biggest party despite not having a governing majority, something they are actually quite used to with the 1854 to 1856 term and the 1858 to 1860 term. Although they weren't the leaders in the 1854 to 56 term, if the setbacks are one thing for Lincoln, it's a migraine, a pain to get through that makes life harder, but something you can deal with. Although it's not a victory for Democrats, they're claiming it as such. And while they have much to be happy for, it's over, really. 2 more years before their next shot at either the House, government, and the presidency. But the real victors are the Unionists, the kingmakers. This might as well be a presidential election for the Blair family of Missouri, because they now have veto power in Congress, assuming that the Unionist Party still listens to them, which it might not, as Thomas Swan and John P. Kennedy have been making moves at the heart of the party. What will the political landscape be on March 4th, 1863, when the 38th Congress meets? Well, we'll have to wait many, many weeks to find out, but right now...
I would like to thank my 2 loyal patrons for all of their support through this realistically very tough time. I would also like to sadly inform you all that iMovie is no longer working as I wish to. This is actually very sad to me since it's the last thing I guess that I've kept consistent throughout this entire journey, besides me being the narrator, which I promise to change as soon as possible. And I'd also like to say I have not forgotten the Ohio 3rd District. That's a very special one, and I shall be covering it next week. But until then, you know the drill. Comment, like, subscribe if you haven't, and check out some of my other videos. Goodbye.